Hello, and welcome to the Dutchess County Fair, a legacy of agriculture and community, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the farms, people, and traditions that make agriculture such an important part of life here in Dutchess County, New York, and beyond. I'm your host, Suzanne Rajczi, a member of the Dutchess County Agricultural Society, a longtime advocate for agriculture, and someone who believes deeply in sharing the stories of the farmers and producers who help sustain our communities. Throughout this series, we highlight the individuals and family businesses that contribute to the rich agricultural heritage of our region. Today's episode focuses on something small in size, but incredibly powerful in its impact on agriculture: honeybees. While many people associate bees with honey, their true importance goes far beyond that. Bees play a vital role in the pollination, supporting crops, plants, and ecosystems that make modern agriculture possible. To help us understand the world of bees and the growing interest in beekeeping, I'm joined today by Michael Lankto of Vlei Forge Apiary in Rhinebeck, New York. Michael is a beekeeper who is passionate about protecting pollinators and educating people about the critical role bees play in agriculture and our environment. Michael, welcome to today's podcast, and really let's just start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you came about to beekeeping, and is this a generational type of farm or agricultural experience?
For the past 46 years, I've been a professional horseshoer. So I've shod horses in this area. I've shod horses in Puerto Rico and Germany for 46 years. And about 11 years ago, my wife said, "Oh, it'd be fun to have bees on our farm." So we went to Hudson Valley Bee Supply and we bought 2 nucleus colonies, which are 2 small hives. So about 11 years ago, I started keeping bees, and I've just been working more and more with my beekeeping and getting more and more colonies. And then last year, about this time, I needed a new hip, so I had hip surgery. So I retired from horseshoeing, and now I'm pretty much a full-time beekeeper.
Awesome. So this is new to your family. You're the one that started beekeeping.
That's correct.
That's incredible. And let's talk about those bees. When you say you buy those colonies, is there a specific species of bee that you have here, or do they vary, and does that matter?
Yeah. So the bees that we use to make honey with are Apis mellifera. So they're the western honeybee. Mm-hmm. So they originally have origins in Africa, and then they went they proliferated through Europe, and they were originally came to America in about 1602 with the colonies in Virginia. And once they came to America, they just loved it here, and they spread all throughout the North American continent. So the bees that we're talking about is Apis mellifera. Those are social honeybees.
Mm-hmm. And are there aside from that specific type of honeybee and how you buy those colonies, can you speak to that? Do you buy like a queen bee and friends and family, or how does that work? What's a bee buy look like?
To get started in beekeeping, mm-hmm. you would buy a small starter hive, which is called a nucleus colony, and it's 5 frames, so it's small, and it has a queen in it. It has worker bees, it has food, it has nectar, it has pollen. So you buy that, you bring it home, and then you put it in your bigger boxes, either 8 frame or 10 frame hives. But the reason you want to start small is you can start handling bees when there's still less numbers, maybe 15,000. A bigger hive, a bigger production colony is eventually going to have 50 to 60,000 bees in it. So a newer beekeeper, that would be a little bit of a daunting task.
Overwhelming.
So right. So that's why you want to start small, and you want to kind of grow with your colony.
Mm-hmm. So, bees are so important to agriculture. And I think that people only think of bees in the aspect of honey producers, but technically they are the pollinators in this supply chain. Without bees, basically, I feel like we may not have food. Are there different bees that pollinate food versus bees that produce honey? Can you speak to that?
So that's a huge question. In the world, we have about 20,000 species of bees. In America, we have about 4,000 species of bees. So most of them do a certain amount of pollinating. The only bees you can really move around that are kind of like livestock are Apis mellifera. So when you think of pollination on a big scale, you think of Western honeybees because we put them in hives. We can transport them on semis. We can transport them to where they need to be. You really can't do that with wild bees or other species. Honey, which is a byproduct from bees, is about in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which is not really much. Pollination contracts are $32 billion industry. So that is the real reason for honeybees as a business is to fulfill pollination contracts. And that would be like there would be no almond crop without 2.1 million colonies of bees being transported to Southern California to pollinate almonds.
So those bees that pollinate our agriculture, do they live in hives? Do they live in the wild? When you say that you have pollinators that go out and support that agriculture and crops and fruit farms and flowers and all aspects, do they just live in the world naturally? You let them loose and away they do their thing? Do they come back home like a homing pigeon, or are bees a little different?
Yep. Most pollinators a lot of pollinators natural are in the wild,
right?
And they are not social insects. They are not social the way honeybees are. Honeybees have a home that they come back to. So they come back to the same hive as the sun starts to go down. They come back to the same hive every day, every night, and they leave from the same hive every morning when the sun gets strong enough that they can geolocate using the sun as their beacon to come back home. So on a shady day or a cloudy day or a rainy day, bees don't fly because they can't use the sun to make their way back. So the bees that we transport are bees that every night they come back to their home. And at that point, you can close them in with screens. You can load them on semis with a forklift, and then you can transport them. And then when you bring them to the new place, they come out, they geolocate, and then that's their new place. That's their new surroundings.
That's incredible. It's incredible that they adapt to their environment like that just based on the sun.
Yeah. So what's interesting is we kind of have this semi rule that you can move bees less than 3 feet or more than 3 miles.
Okay.
So if I move a hive just like a couple of feet, they will go right back to the same place where it was. So you can't really move it more than 3 feet because they won't, if you move it 5 feet, they won't find their new entrance. They'll keep right going back. So, but if you move them more than 3 miles, they will relocate and then they're okay.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of dilemma with bees.
Oftentimes when you see an apiary, you see multiple hives. Do bees get confused?
That's called drifting.
Okay.
So the nurse bees don't drift too much, but
what's a nurse?
and they're the female bees.
Okay.
93% of the bees in the hive are female worker bees. There are about 7% of male bees, and those are called drones. They drift. They will drift from hive to hive. They don't have as much of allegiance to a certain hive. They do to an apiary, but they will drift back and forth between hive. And the guard bees, the female guard bees, seem to let them in. They don't stop them. Where if a nurse bee tried to go into a hive that wasn't hers, she might be stopped and turned around, and she would eventually find her own hive.
And talk about the hive itself. I mean, I'm so interested in knowing how they reproduce and how frequently. What is the life cycle of a bee? I mean, do they live forever? And again, the makeup of female bees versus male bees, and do all male bees live and go out in the world if they don't have a job to do at a hive?
Yeah. So, in the summertime, a female worker bee lives between about 4 and 6 weeks. So she has certain jobs that she does during her lifetime. Her first job is to clean up the cell that she's just been born in. And then she starts to do a little cleaning of other cells. Then she gets fed some food, and then she turns into a feeder of other baby bees. Her job changes. The only bees that can make wax to make all of their foundation and their homes are bees between the ages of 3 and 12 days. So that is her job for a while.
Only a female bee makes
Only
wax?
a female bee has 8 wax glands on their bottom of their abdomen that can secrete
That's incredible.
wax, and it's only between the ages of 3 and 12 days, and then the wax glands go away. And she goes on to another job. She may be feeding bees. She may be working as an undertaker bee. She could be a house cleaner. Eventually, she'll become a guard bee. And then after she's been a guard bee for a few days, then she becomes a forager. And generally, a forager will be her last job.
And then she just drops to the ground and sayonara? Or?
She usually, on one of her last missions, which could be collecting nectar, it could be collecting pollen, it could be collecting water, or it could be collecting wood sap. Those are the 4 things that foragers collect. She just doesn't come. Just her wings wear off, and she just doesn't make it back. Being a forager is a very hard job. Generally, a forager you're not more of a forager for more than like 12 days.
Wow. Because they fly and carry all of the moisture or feed
They're
back
carrying a heavy weight. There's a lot of predation. Birds get them.
Right.
Darning needles will eat them. Things like that. Sometimes if they're out in a big thunderstorm, that can knock them off course, and they don't make it home. Now, also, those are summer bees. The summer nurse female bees live to 4 to 6 weeks, but a winter female bee lives 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
So that's very different. Now, a queen bee can live 2 to 3 years. She's the only
one queen bee in a hive?
One queen in a hive at a time. Every once in a while in the springtime, there can be a little bit of a mother-daughter relationship, but the mother is generally being kind of like moved out eventually. But the reason that the winter female bees live so long is because when the queen stops laying in the fall, there are no more baby bees to feed, so they don't activate their brood food glands, and that's a big thing that takes a lot out of them. Another thing is there's no more foraging. There's nothing to forage in the outside world anymore. It's cold. They don't go outside. So without feeding other baby bees and without foraging, their job now is to make sure that the queen has enough warmth to go through October all the way to March and April. That's their job, is to get that queen through by keeping her warm.
So with this unprecedented cold winter that we've had, are your bees subject to freezing to death, or typically?
They can be if the cluster is not big enough. They don't go into fall with enough bees. They can freeze to death. Another thing, too, with the really cold weather is bees don't defecate in a hive. So if it's below like 40 degrees for a long time, or 45 degrees, the bees have to, they can't go to the bathroom in the hive. So eventually you see a semi-warm day where it's sunny, they all come out and they have a big defecation flight. So if you're in the apiary, it's you better have a hat on.
That's pretty incredible. That's awesome. So when you talk about like maintaining and feeding, do you do anything to impact the hive, whether it be water, cleaning, anything like that? I mean, what's your job as a beekeeper in good hive maintenance?
Well, sometimes they come out of winter and they've used up a lot of their food. So at that point, we're putting some water some sugar syrup on it. It's sometimes we use a 2-to-1, 2 part sugar, 1 part water. We mix it up and we'll put it in feeders and we'll feed them to make sure. So I'll go around and I'll lift up the back of the hive and I'll see, is it light? Is it dangerously light? And if it is, then I'll put sugar water on in the late spring. Sometimes during the wintertime, I'll open it up very, very quickly and I'll put some sugar bricks on, and to that's like emergency feeding. But this time of the year, what we're doing is we're checking to see our queen overwintered. We're checking to see she's laying eggs, and then we're starting to give them room, because as soon as the queen gets enough pollen, she starts to lay 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day.
She's busy.
She's very busy, and the nurse bees keep her on track, and they steer her around, and she's laying eggs. So we have to go from our winter boxes to now we need to put something on top of the winter boxes, because generally the bottom box is the brood box where the babies are.
Right.
The top big box is their pantry where they put their nectar and they put their pollen. And then we have to start putting boxes on top for that, because they're going to be bringing in so much nectar that they have to have a place to put that nectar. Because if they start putting the nectar where the queen has to lay, then she's going to see a lack of room and she's going to swarm.
Swarm meaning see you later, bye, or
Yep. The queen. If the nurse bees see that she doesn't have enough place to lay, they will stop feeding her. They'll put her on a diet, and every nurse bee that walks by her will shake her. They'll put her on a diet, and they'll thin her down. They'll have her lose weight, because when she's in laying form, she really can't fly.
Right. She bulks up.
So she'll lay some special eggs that they start feeding. That will be the next queens, and then when those new queens are about ready to hatch, the old queen will fly out with about 50 to 60% of the members of the hive, and they will find a new place to live. So if you were thinking about getting honey from that hive, your honey hopes just kind of flew
the hive.
Exactly.
Instead of flew the coop.
Yeah. So that's why one of the things you're doing is you're constantly looking to give them room, to see that their brood space where she lays is not getting backfilled with nectar. And there are many manipulations you can use to do that, but that's primarily what we're doing this time of year.
You mentioned the actual hive. Can you just share with the audience the architecture of the hive, the multiple layers and what's in each layer, and can they get higher than 4 layers or 6 layers? And is there ever a point where a hive is too high? Or, I mean, could you share?
So the base is called the bottom board or the landing board, and that's the basement. That's the foundation of the hive. And then we'll have a deep box, and then frames go into that. Individual frames go into that, and that's primarily where the queen's domain is. She also may go into, we also put another deep box on top of that, and she might also go a little bit up into the top of that as well. We think of the honey nest as kind of like a sphere, and just like anything, you always have your babies in the center of that sphere, and then you'd have your pollen on the periphery. The nurse bees feed the baby larvas 1,300 times a day, so they want that pollen close by, so they can go get the pollen, feed the babies, get the pollen. So on the outside of that is now the honey dome, and that is their carbohydrates. The pollen is the protein. The honey and nectar is the carbohydrates. So as more and more of the nectar comes in, that's why we start putting boxes up on top of that. Sometimes what we'll do is we have a screen, a grating that we put on top of the top brood box. The queen is the biggest bug in the box,
right,
so she can't get up through that queen excluder, but the other workers can. So they'll putting nectar and honey up above that. She can't go up there, so her domain is down in the brood boxes.
When you talk about screens, is it what type of material makes up a screen?
Well, you can see there's a plastic one and there's a metal one right there.
Right.
So that's what we usually use. The metal. We usually use the metal queen excluders. They hold up better and they're easier to clean at the end of the year. So they're made out of metal.
And the other screens are plastic, or they're
There are plastic ones. They're a little bit less expensive, but they don't last as long.
are they fussy about their screen, or
Well, that if you want to start a little argument at a bee club meeting, you can talk about queen excluders. Not everybody uses them.
Okay.
Some people laughingly call them honey excluders because the nurse bees or the forager bees have to go through there,
Right.
and there's always a debate: are you tiring? Are you hurting your foragers by having them to go through this screening material?
how big is a queen bee comparative to the rest of the bees?
She's probably about 40% bigger. She's
Okay.
longer because her abdomen has to be able to curl down and lay an egg at the bottom of the cell.
Right.
So she's longer, and that's the biggest. She has longer legs and she has a much bigger abdomen.
If you looked into your hive, you'd recognize a queen bee.
I would, because I've been doing it for a while, and most people would too. But how we help our chances when we first see a queen bee emerge and she comes back on a mating flight, we generally catch her, and then we have some little paint pens, and we mark her thorax. This year's color is white. There are 5 colors. There's an international paint coloring scheme. So you can tell this year that ends in the year 6 is a
Okay.
white color. So the year 1 and 6 are white. Then there's also blue, green, white, and red.
And when you say you paint her, do you paint her, or to mark her in the hive?
Yep. You hold her carefully in your fingers, and you have some paint pens, which I have over there, and you just make a little circle on the behind her head.
She doesn't sting you. She's agreeable to being painted.
Queens are not stingy
Okay.
creatures. The only thing they would sting would be another virgin queen.
Okay.
When they emerge in the hive, they will sting their competitors, such that they eventually become the queen.
They sting them to kill them.
That's right.
No other. They eliminate the
Right, yep.
competition.
And the queen doesn't have a barbed stinger, so she can sting and still live. With the nurse bees, they have a barbed stinger. So if they sting you and their stinger stays in you and they walk away, they die.
Yeah, that's interesting. And let's talk about bee stinging. I mean, typically, you're working out there in the hives, and how many times have you been stung?
Pretty much all the time.
Okay.
So a little bit. People used to ask me when I shot horses, "Do you ever get kicked?" And that's like, yeah. You get kicked quite often.
It's part of the job.
It is. But the same thing, a beekeeper. I in the springtime, when the bee numbers are low, coming through winter, there are like 20,000 bees in a hive. They've made it through winter. You can wear very little equipment. I can wear a veil. I usually don't wear gloves because there's just not a lot of the bees don't really have too much at that point. They're looking for your guidance in a certain way.
So they're not angry at you.
No. Now later on, when it gets to be fall and there's 50 or 60,000 bees, and they've brought in this huge amount of nectar and honey
Right.
that they're using, they're more defensive because they're defending their hive from the other colonies as well, and that's when robbing can happen. So anytime you're opening up a hive in the fall, you want to be quick with what you're doing, because you don't want the other 8 other hives to come and start bothering the bees that you have open.
So when you say robbing, other bees will come in and like overtake a hive because
Yep.
that's what they do. It's
Yeah, humans use the word robbing. Really, scientists use the word foraging.
Okay.
We put a robbing term on it, but they're actually just foraging. Oh, look, here's food. Let's forage. There's in the fall time when there's not, in the August, there's not a lot of rain. Sometimes we're in a dearth, so there's not a lot of foraging for them to do in the real world. But like, oh my goodness, they smell nectar right here. Let's forage.
Yeah, easier.
Yeah.
Take the path of least resistance.
Yeah, it's
right?
very close.
How about that? So beekeeping in the Hudson Valley, I hear more and more people getting hives and, starting the process of beekeeping. What makes the Hudson Valley and the Rhinebeck area such a good area for beekeeping?
I think it has generally it has a nice amount of water. We get although the last few years we have had some dearths, but we generally get some good water. So that means our nectar flows are pretty good. We got a nectar flow probably starting in May. And our nectar usually goes to probably about the second week in July. So that's when the bees are bringing in most of the honey for us is in May and June and July.
Okay.
After that, I bring most of my honey supers off, which is what we collect the honey in, and the goldenrod and the asters. If there's a flow, that honey goes to the bees for their overwintering.
So, meaning the flower that is growing and that environment or what they're out getting, that impacts the flavor of the honey, or it impacts the hive itself, because
Exactly. So what they're foraging on in the springtime, we have really nice. Sometimes we have a very nice black locust flow.
Yes.
We have clover. Sometimes we have chestnut flows. All of these flows.
those are flowers
Right.
or grasses or
A lot of it, people think a lot of flowers to it, but it's actually a lot of tree mass.
Right.
We have a lot of trees in the Hudson Valley. So we have maples and lindens and black locust. Those are the trees that bring in a lot of the nectar that the bees use. Then later in the fall, in the goldenrod, that honey is a lot darker, and a lot of times people like the lighter honey. So the darker honey in the fall is really what we use for the bees to overwinter with.
does it change the flavor profile?
It changes the flavor.
The
It
color.
changes the color. Yep, I have 4 apiaries, and I extract honey off of them, each of them 2 times a year, in late spring and then early fall. And every honey will be different every time I extract it. So it's very interesting. The wild berries. There's so many flowers out there we have in the Hudson Valley that plants and trees that make up. And you can send your honey away to I believe it's University of Pennsylvania, and they will tell you what the predominance. They'll break down on a pie graph what your honey and the pollens are in your honey.
And typically your honey is just general honey. Like sometimes you see honey that is wildflower honey, or yours is just a general blend, or
Right, because I'm still kind of a learning beekeeper. To really get exact flows, you have to really be very good with getting your honey supers on at the exact time, and then getting your honey supers off at the exact time, and then you can say this is black locust, or this was whatever was flowering in your area,
Right.
Tupelo or sourwood. Those are honeys from down south, but those are very famous honeys too. And that's also another reason why a brood box is this big and the frames are this big. When you're collecting honey, the honey boxes and the frames are this big.
right.
So it gives a chance for the bees to fill that up quickly in a 1 or 2 week period, and then you can take that box off, and you pretty much know you've captured that black locust flow, or whatever that flow was on.
if you didn't remove that honey, would they suffocate?
No, they have entrances. They have a top entrance and they have a bottom entrance.
Okay.
And they walk in between the frames, so there's room for them to walk in between the frames. They have something called bee space.
Yeah, I think we need to kind of take a look and see what a bee frame looks like, and kind of the habitat of the bee. So let's just shift gears a little bit and talk about your family's relationship with the Dutchess County Fair.
Sure.
And, thank you. You are the beekeeper at the fair, where 2 hives are housed? Is that?
I think we have eight colonies there now.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. And you manage and maintain and provide oversight. Are they the same bees, type of bee at the fairgrounds that are here
Yep.
than on your farm?
They're Apis mellifera, and I started the apiary there about 5 years ago, and the bees just love it there. They do very well. They're very strong. They make quite a bit of honey, and
Because they like the rides and the food and the agriculture there,
like
those bees.
I just think they like the
The action?
environment. Yeah, and we had an organic beekeeping class. Dr. Robin Underwood came up from Penn State University, and we had members of our club and also some other clubs come and do a 2-day organic beekeeping class at the fairgrounds a couple of years ago, and we would probably like to do that again at some point. But people really liked, and the fair was great because we could use, I think we used the poultry building
Right.
for our microscopes and dissection things and that. And then we could also just drive down, walk down, right down to the apiary and see the bees as well.
You mentioned the word organic beekeeping. Is there a difference between organic and non-organic, and what makes organic beekeeping?
So when I was, we have to treat, at this point, we're trying to get away from it. But we have to treat our bees for this mite, varroa destructor, that came to the United States in 1986. So there are harsher chemicals, synthetic chemicals, and that gets in the wax, that gets in the honey. So we try to use more organic methods, which is oxalic acid or formic acid. We also use manipulations with brood breaks, where we take the queen out and we let them go broodless for a while, because these mites reproduce in the brood. So if there's no baby bees and no brood, the mites can't reproduce. So so these are all things that we talk about with organic beekeeping, is using better methods, softer methods, such that we're not hurting the bees and the environment.
How do the mites get into the hive? Do the bees bring them in, or they just fly in, or
They once they get into one colony somewhere, and they came into a port probably, off a container ship or something, and they started in like Florida or South Texas, and then eventually they just go from bee to bee. When a bee is out foraging and it meets another bee that has a mite on it, the mite might go from one bee to another bee. So eventually, with bees swarm, and when they swarm, they move to another place. So mites get transferred from wild hives sometimes to managed colonies. So that's another thing. There's another thing too looming on the horizon. It came from Thailand. Right now it's in Georgia, and when I mean Georgia over by the Ukraine.
right?
And that's
country.
another mite called Trobolalaps. And so right now scientists are studying that mite over there. They're trying to get a handle on it and what we can do to protect ourselves before it actually comes to the United States. So varroa destructor, we had no warning. When it came here, it took us a few years to realize what it was, and that's what caused colony collapse disorder. But so now we know about this other mite. So the USDA is trying to
Proactively address it,
exactly.
and they'll do that through study and science.
Yep.
Varroa destructor. That's quite a name for a mite.
Yeah, well, this new mite, Trobolalaps, is supposed to be even worse. It reproduces even quicker. So this is why it would be devastating to the
Agriculture
and the
food supply.
biosecurity to the food supply if we don't get a handle on this mite.
Yeah, you think about cybersecurity, and then you think about something like this, a foodborne outbreak or, an infestation, and that would devastate our supply chain, our food supply chain. Pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
But let's go back to the Dutchess County Fair. and talk about your history there. You mentioned to me earlier that, your parents participated in the fair, and you too have been part of the fair other than the beekeeping. So maybe share that with the audience.
Yeah, my mom used to show her cow at the Dutchess County Fair, I think in the 1950s. And my grandparents and my parents were in the Red Hook Range for years. So the Grange always has really great exhibits at the fair. And my grandfather always we had great exhibits with trains coming around big mountains, and he used to win best Grange exhibit. And so we actually used to stay. My brother and I would stay at the fair in a camper, right near where the 4-H buildings are. During the course of the fair, to make sure that if there was a pond or a lake or something in the exhibit, my grandfather would fill it up to keep it looking good. And I rode horses. I was in horse 4-H, so I got to stay at the fair when my horse stayed at the fair during the course of the fair. And it was just a great time there.
It's incredible.
We stayed right in the barns with the beef club. So we had the beef club and the horse club, and then of course there were sheep and all kinds of good 4-H stuff.
Is there a bee exhibit now at the fair?
The Northern Dutchess Bee Club in Building E. We have a bee booth. It's about 1,000 square foot bee booth, where we have a honey contest that people from many counties enter their honey and their candles and their wax, and we even have a photography section now. We have a section that we have an extractor to show people how honey is extracted. We have a kids table. Yep, we have a kids table for stamping and coloring. And then I bring a observation hive in every day, so people can meet the queen and see the queen, and and see her laying. So we have a very big presence at the Dutchess County Fair.
That's incredible when you bring in an actual queen bee and you call it an observation hive. You actually see working bees and what they're doing and how the whole process happens.
The hive is the walls are plexiglass.
Okay.
So people can look right in.
Not too hot for them?
It has a lot of screening on the top and the bottom.
Okay.
And the bees do a really good job of regulating their temperature. I bring some water in for them to cool the hive down as well. They drink the water, and they don't, every day I bring in a different colony, so I don't really stress the same queen and the same bees. So at the end of the day, those bees go back home with me, and in the morning I bring a different colony to the fair.
Do they like to be out of their hive and put on a vehicle and brought to the fair?
I don't think so, but
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, and it's funny because generally they're pretty good for most of the day. Then it seems to be like 3:30 or 4 o'clock come, and they just like
time to go home.
We've had it when they start running around a little bit. So that's when a golf cart comes, picks me up, and
away you go.
Exactly.
And take your bees with you. That's really incredible. So we talked a little bit about the environmental impact, the disease specifically, but are there other environmental impacts that could, hurt or harm the bees, whether it be wildlife, water pollution, air pollution, fire, etc.? I don't know.
The big stressors of bees are loss of habitat.
Okay.
So when land is developed, that is a stressor for bees. Also, pesticides and herbicides, and plants such as corn and soybean, because they're Roundup ready, so
right.
Their seeds have Roundup in them, which washes downstream and kind of gets in the water supply as well. I think we all have a certain amount of Roundup in our bodies at this point. And and we're big, so we can maybe deal with it. But
Right.
bees are smaller, so those are another thing that stresses the bees a little bit is our weird weather we've been having. There are
So global warming, or
yeah,
you
yeah,
think?
and the fact that we sometimes we get a lot of rain, then sometimes we don't get very much rain. Now this was a little bit of an outlier of a winter. We had more traditional cold weather. But there's some times when, on Christmas Day, I've come out and my bees are flying.
Right.
And that just shouldn't happen. It should be, the bees like to be around, the weather to be around 20, 25, 30 degrees, 35 degrees. And then they stay in their cluster. They don't come out. They don't use up a lot of energy.
Right.
And they use up their reserves of honey much less. When they're very active, they use up more honey. And so you have to really be careful that the hives don't starve out at that point.
It's so interesting. Anything I missed as far as talking about bees and the type of bees that you have here, and we kind of understand the life cycle of a bee. Is there any advice you can give to a potential person considering bringing hives into their home, into their properties?
Sure, it's a really awesome hobby to start. You would definitely want to join a bee club. In our bee club, you can go online at www.northerndutchessbees.org to see our website. I would also recommend that you get a subscription to
American Bee
Journal. This has been in publication since 1861, and I don't know too many people who are in the bee business who don't read that cover to cover. But being in a bee club is super important because you meet older bee members. Eventually, if you stay in it long enough, you become an older bee person, and you can help new bee
shared experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And we meet once a month. And we have speakers, we have PhDs, we have professors, we have professional beekeepers that come in. So we have a meeting once a month, which is the first Tuesday of every month, and we try to have very informed speakers, so everybody can learn stuff.
How big is the bee club? How many people?
We have about 80 members.
Wow.
And but I'm in many clubs. There's a Catskill Mountain Bee Club. There's a Columbia County Beekeepers. We're the Northern Dutchess Beekeepers. There are beekeepers on Westchester County.
Okay.
There are some very big beekeeping clubs in the city. They have thousands of members.
Because there's hives in the city, or because
Yep, people keep hives in the city. They keep them on buildings. They keep them in on the outskirts of cemeteries. There's quite a bit. You don't need much land for bees. That's the nice thing about bees. Bees will forage in a 3-mile radius. So anytime there's some kind of fauna, they will find that.
And here, you have some good infrastructure. We're sitting today in your bee shed. Is that what we call it?
My bee shed.
And this is where you maintain your hives and do maintenance and building. And but you also have your hives outside. And you said you have six colonies that you're.
I have four apiaries total.
Apiaries.
Four
right.
apiaries, and right now I have about 58 colonies total, spread out among those. You don't necessarily want to have all your bees
in one
spot,
right?
Because they can use up the resources in that area. So you tend to spread your colonies around, your hives around.
Do you move them? Do you actually pick them up and move them?
If I'm doing manipulations and I'm taking bees out, it's good to have an apiary that's, like we talked about earlier, that's more than 3 miles away from
right.
yours. So if I take bees out, I move them into a box and I just set them like 10 feet over here, they would all fly right back to the box I took them out of. So I take them out, I put them in that box, I close them up, and I drive them to an apiary that's more than 3 miles away, and then they'll come out, they go, oh, we've never been here before.
How nice is this?
Yeah, this is a new spot. Let's check it out. So they'll stay there.
That's
so
pretty cool.
So that's one of the ways that you maneuver. I've done it in the past. I don't do it anymore. I don't move bees for pollination. But if you have to pollinate an orchard or something like that, then you'd also close your bees in and move them at nighttime.
That's it. I meant to ask you about that, about, fruit orchards. Here in the Hudson Valley region, we have grapes and apples, and peaches and cherries. Do you, is that a different type of bee that would go do that type of pollination?
That would be the same type of bee. The only different type of bee that do pollination, and that's more like in greenhouses, is bumblebees have an expertise for working in greenhouses, and I don't know the reason why. I just know that. But there's a lot of native pollinators that also pollinate apples. But basically, a lot of crops that are pollinated would be citrus, apples, canola, melons, gourds, strawberries, blueberries, cranberries.
Beautiful flowers? Because
I don't know about flowers.
well, I think about the melon flower and
Yeah, well, a lot of squash flowers.
The blossoms are beautiful.
Yep.
Absolutely.
There are squash bees that are different from Apis mellifera, and they do a lot of the squash and the gourds. But if there's not enough in that area, they bring them in, and farmers will pay for pollination because they realize that sometimes a 40% increase in production when they bring managed colonies in.
Right. So that's not your business. That's
No.
you're a hobby. You're a hobbyist.
Yep. Well, I'm kind of called a sideliner.
A sideliner.
Once you get over 50, now you're a sideliner. That's
Okay.
my side hustle.
Okay, your side hustle is beekeeping.
Yeah.
I love that. But those orchards around here, could they reach out to you and borrow your bees?
They do. Reach out to our club, and we try to send them to somebody who's more of a pollination specialist.
Awesome. And your honey, where can you produce honey, right? And produce and bottle honey. Talk to me a little bit about that process and the gathering process of honey. And does it need to be pasteurized or heated to a certain temperature? Or is it right out of the hive into the bottle and into the consumer?
The best thing about honey is it has a very high microbial aspect to it. So honey can stay good for a very long time, hundreds of years.
Say that to me again. A bottle jar of honey can stay for hundreds of years?
Yep.
Wow.
Now it's going to be crystallized. It's not going to be in a liquid form. It'll return, and that's one of the reasons why you know it's real honey that hasn't been heated. 75% of the honey in the United States is actually not produced in the United States. It's produced in other countries, and the USDA doesn't have a definite definition of what honey really is. So when you're buying honey from a beekeeper that you don't really know, like in a store you're buying it, you don't really know what you're buying. You could be buying high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
The second most adulterated food in the world is honey. The first is
pancake syrup or maple syrup.
EVO.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Extra virgin olive oil is the number one adulterated food. Honey is number two. And China owns tracts of land in Argentina and Brazil and Vietnam. And they kind of flood our market with honey much cheaper than the American beekeeper can actually produce honey. So a lot of the honey you buy in stores is not real honey. It's adulterated. It has a lot of sugar water in it. It's also been heated over 160 degrees. So any good enzymes that were in it are no longer in it. So you want to have honey that has never really been above 108 degrees. And that way all the enzymes and the floral tastes are in the honey. So that's why it's important to buy it from a local beekeeper.
And I've heard much about the medicinal value in tackling allergies and taking a teaspoon of honey every day to try to create an allergy, it impacts your allergies or it defrays your allergies. Is there truth in that?
I have I have fall allergies, but I think that it mitigates my allergies somewhat. I'm not saying it totally eliminates them, but I put it in teas. I
Yes.
put honey on my Greek yogurt, and that's my go-to for using honey. And you know, I think regular Greek yogurt is kind of,
Yeah.
but you put a teaspoon of honey on there, and it
Your
makes
local honey.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But so we didn't talk about the process of honey gathering, and you said that the importers heat and maybe pasteurize their honey to a certain level. What do you do? How do you gather honey, and how do you bottle it? And could you share that?
So sure, that's a big process. So the like I said, we had the brood box on the bottom,
Right.
and then we had the bees pantry up on the top. So we never take honey from those two boxes. That's there. So then
Sacred ground.
we put
Right.
our honey boxes up above those, and we monitor them when they get filled. We take them off, and we use these fume boards. Bees don't like the smell of almonds, so we put a fume board, which I have some up there, and we put them on top of those, and they drive the bees down into the main hive. Then we take the honey supers out. We bring them into the honey house, and the honey house has to be warm. It has to be about 88 degrees, 86 degrees.
Where's your honey house?
My honey house is my basement. That's
Okay.
that's my honey house.
All right.
And then we take the individual frames out of the honey boxes, and we put them in a big round spinner. And it's almost like a lettuce spinner, and it goes very fast, and it spins the honey out. It hits the outer wall, it runs down, and it goes through a petcock where we have a coarse filter. It runs through the coarse filter, and then it goes into our 5-gallon buckets, and then we bottle from the 5-gallon buckets. So it's never really been heated at all. It's just raw,
So
coarse
you're
filtered.
just coarse filtered, not fine filtered.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
So there's when you look at honey, and we talked earlier about the different colors of honey. What impacts the color of honey?
So the different colors in the springtime, it's going to be a lighter honey, especially if we get a good black locust flow. It'll almost be a very clear honey. And then later on, as the season goes on, the honey gets darker and darker depending on what they're foraging on. And the darkest honey at the end is goldenrod, and something new we have is a Japanese knotweed, which is starting to it's an invasive species, but the bees tend to like it, and it actually can have almost like a dark purple color to it, which is very
The flowers
interesting.
dark purple, or
No,
the weed?
the flowers are not, but the honey is. The
Okay.
nectar is. I don't know why that is. So we're starting to get that. They have a big flow of that in the Catskills, and now if you're driving around on some of the side roads, I know on Primrose Hill and on Acrid Hook, you're starting to see more and more of this Japanese knotweed. So it's kind of taking over where some of our traditional honeysuckles were, and that kind of flower and plant were. So it impacts the clearer honey is sweeter, and it has more of a singular taste. The darker honey has actually more medicinal qualities to it, and it has more of a taste, a wider palate to it. But it'll have it's more of a longer taste on your palate. When we have our honey contest at the fair, we divide the honeys into 3 or 4 categories: the light amber, dark amber, and dark honey, such that the different honeys are judged in their own categories, in their own classes, and that's interesting.
What would earn a blue ribbon? What would make a blue ribbon honey?
Well, it's a little bit like when you're showing your cattle. It's in a certain class. There's certain things that go: the cleanliness of the bottle, the how high you filled the bottle to the fill line, the clearness of the honey. So it's a little bit like a horsemanship class, and the fact that and then there's 20% of taste.
Right.
So you can see there's many other ways that you go to win a higher ribbon is not just the taste. Now that we have one class called the black bottle class, where you spray paint a bottle black, and there it's judged solely on the flavor of the honey. So there, the judge doesn't want to look at the color. He doesn't look at the consistency. He doesn't see if there's sugar crystals or anything or any smuts on the bottle. They're just tasting the honey, and they're thinking what honey is best on their palate.
So is there a honey sommelier, like a wine sommelier, or?
I think that you definitely. I've watched the honey judge the honey contest, and they drink water in between the honey. Sometimes they eat some very boring crackers to cleanse their palate. So I'd imagine that they actually have a very good palate for judging. The first class they judge, which is the black bottle class, because that is solely on taste, and they want to really judge that first before they have had just a whole bunch of honey that they've tasted. So they judge the black bottle class first when their palate is really new.
Right. So it's not. That's really interesting. All right. Is there anything that I missed or anything that you want to share with the audience today that we haven't touched on?
The only thing I would like to say is we really need to keep funding of the USDA, the Department, United States Department of Agriculture. It's very important to us for our food security. The ags and market. Yep. They come and inspect my bees and my hives every year. That's an important thing.
Because you're a certified seller of honey.
Right, because I sell nucleus colonies, I sell hives, I sell bees. My apiary has to be inspected, and those are the USDA and the ags and market is a very good agency that we need to keep funding. And they do a good job. If we have a American foul brood outbreak, which could be a disease that your bees could get, that's
different than the mite.
That's different from the mite. Except there's European foul brood and there's American foul. Now these are not. They have not happened in quite a few years.
Is it a bug? Is it a parasite?
No, it's a disease. It's like a spore. There's a spore.
All right.
And but these guys are very good at isolating apiaries. And if, let's say, I had it in my apiary, and they knew of other apiaries that they were inspected around that 3-mile fly zone, they would inform those people and check their bees for health as well. So these are all very good agencies that do a great job.
And supporting the supply chain, food supply chain, and
keeping our food supply safe.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask also about the honeycomb, and we didn't speak to that because I've seen people purchase honeycomb with honey in it. It's almost perceived. You see these nice charcuterie boards now, and you see these pieces and combs of honey. Yep. That's got to be like the delicacy of honey. Is
so producing comb honey is kind of like the acme for a beekeeper.
Okay.
And that's very European. Americans have more of a liquid honey. We're used to more liquid honey, but the Europeans, they have more. Their tradition is more comb honey, and they dissolve that in their tea.
Right.
They eat that. It used to be years ago if you bought a set of dishes. Like you would have like a gravy urn. There used to be something that cut comb would go right on.
Right.
They don't really sell that anymore because cut comb has fallen out of fashion. But it actually is coming around back again in the States. And there are some very good beekeepers in our area who produce cut comb. And that's something that I'm still working on. You have to have very strong bees, very healthy bees, and get your honey boxes out at just the right time.
Yeah.
And then you have to get them off at just the right time because people like to see that white, clear, comb. And if the comb is on the hive too long, the bees walk on it with their feet, and their feet make it a little bit darker. Right. So it's the timing is very crucial to that, and that's something that I am still trying to work on.
And that actual comb is wax.
It's wax.
Pure wax.
Yep, and that can be eaten.
And yeah, and there's a medicinal value in the wax?
I'm not sure about that.
Health and wellness.
Yeah, that I can't speak to, but it's a delicacy for sure.
There's been a lot of talk about, supply chain and food supply chain and environmental impacts. As a consumer, what can we do to help support the supply chain of food and protect and preserve honey? I mean bees.
There's things that people can do without getting bees, and not everybody should really have bees.
No.
So really, not over mowing your lawn. Not having a huge lawn that's just like a desert. A huge lawn that's sprayed with certain chemicals and stuff is just a desert for bees. So it let your lawn go a little bit longer. Sometimes I just mow paths to my garden, and I'll mow a path to my compost pile. I don't necessarily mow the whole lawn. Buying local foods and supporting the local farmers who rely upon the beekeepers is a good way to help the environment. All these things, not using Roundup, doing more pruning and things like that are probably all ways of helping the health of the bees. There's a frame of honey right there, and they smell bee stuff in here, and they're very curious. Bees are very, very curious animals. And that's what they're and they like light too.
Yeah, you call them an animal. I thought they were an insect. That's interesting that you said that.
I guess they are. I don't. I think of them as little animals. I don't know. I guess because I grew up with horses and stuff. I always think of taking care of the animals. Doing your chores.
But you're desensitized to bees, obviously, because you get stung every day. Is what
True. There's a sweet spot as far as you want to get stung, a couple hundred times a year.
Perfect.
And I think I do. What is not so good is people who are around bees and don't get stung. They're the ones that are the most likely to develop allergies and allergic reaction. So my wife, it's good for her to get stung every once in a while if she's handling clothes, that have bee pollen and bee venom on them and stuff like that. But most of the times when people get stung, it's not from bees. People always say bees, but it's really yellow jackets or wasps or hornets. I'll say, you got stung? Were you around a managed colony?
Right.
Oh, no, I was,
mowing my grass.
Exactly.
And ran over a yellow jacket nest.
So that's very likely. So bees sometimes get a bad rap when it comes to stinging, when it's really not a bee, but we just use that term.
Is there any quick remedy to de-escalate what a bee does to you? Is baking soda and water?
I've heard of things like that. I don't use anything like that.
When
I first started working bees and I would get stung on my hands would swell quite a bit. Then after I've gotten stung a few hundred, maybe more times, I get stung now, and my body almost doesn't even react to it anymore.
And you wear a specific garb, right, or attire when you're out there working your bees, or protective gear?
I'm almost always wearing a veil.
Okay.
Because I think
a veil is over your head and eyes.
It's over my head. So if I'm just around, I'll just throw a quick veil from my shoulders up to my head, just because I don't want to get stung in the eye or something like that. Getting stung in the ear. And nose, those always hurt a little bit. If you get stung in your arm, that's not a big deal. As the season progresses, then I'll start to wear more of a jacket and a coat, because the bees now all of a sudden they have more to protect and they become more defensive.
Right. They're like, stay out of my turf, so to speak.
Exactly.
And that, back to that comb, at the end of the season, do you empty it out, or it always stays in the hive?
So I protect my honeycomb very much. After I spin the honey out of my comb that has the honey in it, I'll put it out in a couple hundred yards from where my apiary is, and I let the bees come in. They clean it out. Any little nectar that still doesn't get spun out, they come and clean it out.
So
and then I'll store it. So all these boxes here
are full of comb.
are all full of my comb. Because that is that next to your bees, that is the beekeeper's biggest
Critical
thing that they own is their comb, their drawn out comb. Because when you start with the frame, it has no comb on it,
Right.
And it takes, like I said, it's only those bees that are between the ages of 3 and 12 days that have the ability to make the comb. So that's why you always need to be churning over new bees in your hive to have a different workforce.
I think we've woken them up a little bit because they seem to be like coming into the shed, like you said, to check, maybe checking you out or checking me out or whatever.
They like it in here.
Yeah, like warm. Maybe it's warmer, right? Like you said, lights, etc. But I can't thank you enough. I mean, this was so incredibly educational. I know I learned a lot about beekeeping and the importance of good beekeeping and just the popularity of bees, and what you shared today. I think the audience is really going to find interesting.
Well, thank you, and we're in Building E at the Dutchess County Fair.
That's great.
Tuesday to Sunday, so come check out our bee booth.
We'll be by for sure.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and passion for beekeeping with us today. It's incredible to think that something as small as honeybees play such a powerful role in supporting agriculture, food production, and healthy ecosystems. Your work at Vlei Forge Apiary helps remind us how interconnected agriculture, nature, and community truly are. Thank you for listening to the Dutchess County Fair, a Legacy of Agriculture and Community podcast. Our mission with this series is to celebrate the people, farms, and traditions that keep agriculture strong here in Dutchess County. If you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to like and share this podcast on your social media channels and help us tell the stories of agriculture in our community. By sharing these episodes, you help shine a light on the farms, producers, and agricultural stewards who make such an important contribution to our region. You can learn more about the Dutchess County Fair and the Dutchess County Agricultural Society at dutchessfair.com. Be sure to mark your calendars for the 180th anniversary of the Dutchess County Fair. Opening day kicks off on Tuesday, August 25th, and the fair runs through August 30th in beautiful Rhinebeck, New York. We look forward to seeing you there. I'm your host, Suzanne Rajczi, and we'll see you next time as we continue celebrating a legacy of agriculture and community in Dutchess County.